So here's a question for you. How can a simple, shared meal completely transform a community that's been shattered by doubt and arguments? It sounds kind of out there, right? Well, today we're diving into a theological lecture that tackles this exact idea. It uses an ancient story to lay out a really powerful blueprint for how we can find unity even when we're divided. And this line right here, "Stay with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is now far spent." That single, heartfelt request, that's actually the title of the lecture we're digging into today by theologian Father Pablo Blanco Sarto. It's just a simple plea, two travelers talking to a stranger at the end of a really long, really confusing day. But that one line, it sets the stage for a total transformation.
Which brings us right back to that central question. How can a shared meal transform a broken community? Well, Father Sarto argues that this one specific story, the journey of the disciples on the road to Emmaus, that's where the answer is. It's the key. It's a story all about moving from isolation and bickering to this incredible moment of recognition, and then from there to a shared mission.
All right, so let's set the scene because it really starts in a place of despair. We're on a road and you've got these two disciples. And the key thing is they're walking away from Jerusalem, the very center of all their hope. I mean, they're just confused, they're arguing with each other, they're completely down in the dumps. They just seen these world-changing events, but as Sarto points out, they just couldn't make sense of it all. They didn't get the meaning behind the mystery.
Yeah, Sarto makes this really powerful point that their eyes were literally incapable of recognizing the truth, even though it was walking right there beside them. And that state, that feeling of division, of being so overwhelmed by doubt and sadness that you can't see what's right in front of you, that's not just some ancient problem. It's a deeply human one. And that is the exact problem this whole journey is about to solve.
So here's how Sarto breaks their transformation down. He says it happens in two parts that are totally distinct, but you absolutely can't separate them: the word and the bread. And you got to see the difference here. On one hand, you have the word. That's hearing the scriptures explained. That leads to an intellectual understanding, right? It makes their hearts burn with hope. But then you have the bread, the physical act of sharing a meal. And that's what leads to spiritual recognition. That's what finally opens their eyes. This two-step process is basically the engine that drives this entire story.
So let's look at that first part, the word on the road. It all starts so simply. A stranger just joins them on their walk. There's no flashy miracle, nothing like that. He just starts a conversation. He just starts to explain. Sarto calls this the liturgy of the word, and what the stranger does is pretty amazing. He takes all the events that have just completely confused and divided them, and he puts them into a bigger story. He connects all the dots back to the scriptures. And this is where the healing starts. Not with some big spectacle, but with simple understanding. I mean, just think about the power of this moment. The disciples say this to each other after the stranger has talked to them, but before they actually recognize who he is. So their eyes aren't open yet, but you can tell something has totally shifted inside them. Sartorio's point here is that understanding is what ignites hope. It's like a burning warmth where before there was just the cold, hard feeling of doubt. So, if we're going to sum up the power of the word here, it's about way more than just getting answers. It completely changes their whole dynamic. All of a sudden, their arguments turn into a real conversation. Their personal doubts get squared away with a shared history. And this sparks this feeling of charity, right? That's what makes them invite the stranger to stay. It's basically getting their hearts and minds ready for the big reveal. Okay, so their hearts are prepared, which brings us to the absolute climax of the story. Recognition in breaking bread. They've made it from the road to an inn. They've gone from this walking debate to sitting down at a dinner table. And it's right here. This is where that whole intellectual journey paves the way for a moment of sudden, almost shocking clarity. Think about it. After hours of conversation, it's not another brilliant explanation that reveals who the stranger is. It's an action. He takes the bread, he blesses it, he breaks it, and he gives it to them. And in that one simple physical gesture, bam, their eyes are opened. Sarto argues that this is the absolute core of the Eucharist. It's the act itself that creates the communion and reveals the presence. And this leads to a central line from Sarto's whole lecture, El partir lleva siempre al compartir. It translates to something like, the breaking always leads to the sharing. He's making this incredibly profound connection here. The physical act of breaking something apart is totally linked to the social act of sharing it with others. He's saying you just can't have one without the other. And that is what transforms a bunch of individuals into a real community. So here it is. This is the blueprint for community that Sarto finds in the story. Step 1, you listen to the word. Step 2, you share the bread. And those two actions, they lead to step 3, recognizing the divine presence right there with you. And it's that shared recognition, that final step, that really forges them into a true community.
Now, this whole idea has a pretty fancy theological name, Eucharistic ecclesiology. I know, it sounds super complex, but Sarto presents it as a really simple, even radical idea. He says this phrase over and over, la Eucharistia hace la iglesia. It means the Eucharist makes the church. Get that? The community doesn't just show up for the meal is the very thing that builds the community in the first place.
But wait, the story doesn't just end there at the dinner table. Not at all. Because according to Sarto, this incredible experience of communion, well, it's not an endpoint. It's actually a starting line for something way, way bigger.
And this is so crucial. The Eucharist is not a private act. That recognition they experienced wasn't just for them to keep to themselves. Sarto's whole point is that a shared meal that really truly creates a community has to have social and ethical consequences. It absolutely demands action.
And these are the concrete fruits, as Sarto calls them, that have to grow from this experience. First, there's an immediate impulse for mission that set an urge to get up and go back and share the news. The ritual also demands real-world stuff, like reconciliation with people you've argued with, actively caring for the poor and suffering, and doing the hard work of creating unity out of diversity. In short, the meal has to translate into a mission.
Okay, so let's just trace this complete transformation one last time. Look at this arc. They start out divided, arguing on the road. Then, the journey of listening to the word sets their hearts on fire. The climax, the breaking of the bread, opens their eyes. And the result? Mission. They literally go from walking away in total despair to rushing back with a powerful purpose.
Sarto wraps up his whole argument with this incredibly powerful quote from Pope Francis. The liturgy does not say I, but we, and any limitation to the breadth of this we is always demonic. Wow. I mean, that just underscores the entire point, doesn't it? This is a fundamentally communal act. Any attempt to make it exclusive, to limit who is included in that we, just works against its very nature. It's meant to break down walls, not build new ones.
So the disciples, they turned right around and walked all the way back to Jerusalem. That's like 11 kilometers, in the dead of night. Their despair was completely gone, replaced by this urgent mission. And what Father Sarto's lecture really suggests is that this whole journey, from a shared meal to a shared mission, isn't just some ancient story. Which, of course, leaves us with one final big question. What does that journey look like for us today?